Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story. President Trump confirms there will be no exemptions from his steel and aluminum tariffs. As for what the tariffs aim to fix, China's unfair trade practices. More on how the problem has affected American companies.
We've been forced to close factories, reduce employment, and reduce investment.
The U.S. is building up its submarine presence off Australia's coast. That's as the Trump administration shifts its focus to the China threat in the Indo Pacific.
If someone wakes up and they say, "Is today the day?" we make sure that they say, "Maybe not."
The White House vows to hold anyone seeking to disrupt arts group Shenyang Performing Arts accountable after 5 emails targeting the company as well as a faith group were reported to law enforcement. And cities across China are holding emergency medical drills, spurred on by cases of bird flu breaking out among humans. What signal do the actions send? Before we dive into today's top story, we'd like to share an important update. You can now catch China in Focus on Genjing World every Tuesday instead of YouTube. We'll publish the link in the description box down below at that time, or you can search China in Focus at genjingworld.com. President Trump said Sunday that there would be no exemption from steel and aluminum tariffs. His 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum went into effect last week, targeting countries that use unfair trade practices, including China. He said reciprocal tariffs and sector-specific tariffs would kick off on April 2nd.
It's going to be reciprocal. In other words, whatever they're charging, we're charging. Very simple. If they're charging us, we're charging them. Then in addition to that, on autos, on steel, on aluminum, we're going to have some additional tariffs.
Tom Muth is the president of the Pipe and Tube Division of Zekelman, the largest pipe and tube producer in America. He laid out the China problem at a presser on Capitol Hill earlier this month.
For too long, we've allowed China and the heavily subsidized steel industry in China unlimited access to our markets. For over 2 decades, Zekelman has been battling against these unfairly traded imports from China.
He added these imports have cost his company significantly.
We've been forced to close factories, reduce employment, and reduce investment.
China is the world's largest producer of steel. It also controls 58% of global aluminum production. Backed by state subsidies, Chinese steel and aluminum have flooded the global market. Both Trump and the Biden administrations have said the practice hurts U.S. producers. To fend off the flood of Chinese products, President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum imports during his first term. The U.S. now imports very little steel directly from China, but Chinese steel has been getting around U.S. tariffs by first going through other countries.
Today, these imports come not directly from China, but indirectly. They come from countries like Oman, Thailand, Vietnam, and the UAE. These are all major importers of subsidized and dumped hot-rolled steel from China. These products flow from these countries into our markets.
Muth noted last year his company filed a trade case against Chinese steel producers for dumping hot-rolled coil steel into Oman.
That product is then transformed into steel pipe and dumped in our market, costing us jobs, markets, investment.
U.S. Customs and Border Patrol also found that Thai companies imported Chinese-made steel pipes and mislabeled them before exporting to the U.S. to avoid tariffs. Trump's new tariffs, combined with across-the-board duties on Chinese imports already in place, mean Chinese steel and aluminum now face a 45% tariff rate. Industries like construction, automotive, and appliance manufacturers, all of which rely on metals, will likely feel the impacts most. Canada is poised to bear the brunt of U.S. tariffs as it's the largest supplier of imported steel and aluminum. Over half of America's aluminum imports come from Canada. To discuss President Trump's tariffs to address unfair trade practices, NTD's Iris Tao spoke on Friday to Dan Ikenson, former director of Cato Institute's Center for Trade Policy Studies.
One argument, though, that administration is using is that some tariffs do address national security concerns. Here's another clip from Marco Rubio today. Watch.
In addition to that, there are industries that are critical to the United States and to our domestic security and our future. And he's identified them: steel, aluminum, semiconductors, automobiles. These are things that we believe are in our interest to have a domestic capacity, and we have to protect these industries from what we feel is subsidization and unfair competition from abroad.
Do you agree with that? And do you see potential national security implications of relying on foreign supply chains for these industries?
Yes, actually, there are national security implications. And for years, I was a pretty strong advocate for free trade and didn't give as much consideration to national security implications as we should. We have a system in which we had a rules-based system which enabled China, for example, to grow and use the rules to expand markets and improve their research and development and their production capacity. At some point, it became obvious that China and the United States are in a competition for technological superiority, and that involved stealing intellectual property, heavily subsidizing particular industries. I'm speaking about in China right now, for example, and forcing U.S. companies that wanted to export or invest in China to forfeit their intellectual property in order to do so.
So you said tariffs might not be the most effective tool in countering unfair practices, say, from China. What are some of the more effective ways, you think, in us trying to push back against China's, for example, stealing of intellectual property and unfair trade practices?
Yeah. Well, so the stealing of intellectual property is an issue that came to the fore in the first Trump administration, imposed tariffs under Section 301. But at the same time, they started to develop, actually began in the Obama administration, concern about the kinds of technology that we were exporting to China. And the focus became, maybe we need to prevent some of our high-end technology from getting in the hands of the Chinese, since we're in a competition with them for technological preeminence. Let's limit their access. So we could say it was punitive because they were engaging in unfair practices like intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer. But it's also, a necessary way of staying on top. Now, a lot of people will disagree with me that, hey, by limiting China's access to our technology through these export controls, they're going to go elsewhere and purchase these products from other companies around the world as they develop their technology, or it's going to expedite China's homegrown capacity to produce these things. That's probably true. We need to weigh the economic benefits and costs against the national security benefits and costs, which are difficult. It's a difficult exercise because it's hard to quantify national security benefits and costs. But I think generically there is a legitimate rationale to engage in some form of protection for crucial national security intensive industries. But we should make it exceptional and not the rule.
Dan Ikenson, thank you so much for your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Death threats in favor of Beijing's agenda are soaring in the United States. Last week alone, 5 emails targeting lawmakers and U.S.-based organizations were reported. These messages have one goal: extending the Chinese Communist Party's suppression of faith overseas.
Don't disrupt it. This administration will take that very seriously and hold you accountable. We obviously condemn any violence or threats of violence against American institutions. And the president will be traveling to the Kennedy Center later this afternoon. He is now the chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center, where he hopes to restore arts and culture that embrace American tradition, don't disparage it, as we have unfortunately seen over the past several years.
One of the 5 death threats is directed at high-profile lawmakers and their family members, specifically those who have spoken up for faith group Falun Gong. This comes as Congress reintroduced a bill called the Falun Gong Protection Act earlier this month. The bill seeks to stop Beijing's forced organ harvesting by imposing sanctions and setting up federal investigations and policies against such crimes. One of those emails contained messages mocking U.S. law enforcement. The sender bragged that U.S. officers would not be able to find them. The message was written in Chinese. Another victim of the threats is the New York-based Shenyun Performing Arts. The art group was founded by Falun Gong practitioners who fled persecution in China. Artists at Shenyun view presenting China before communism and exposing human rights abuses in modern-day China as a mission. The performance is banned in China for that reason. Back to the threats, 3 emails attempted to disrupt Shenyun shows in the capital city of Des Moines, Iowa, plus Spain and Taiwan. One translation is, quote, Shenyun dancers performing in Spain will be attacked. Another message targeting Des Moines Performing Arts urged the theater to cancel all Shenyun shows immediately. Otherwise, they would, in their words, detonate the bomb they claimed to have installed earlier, quote, without hesitation. Taiwanese hosts of Shenyun also saw a similar bomb threat. No related incidents have been reported. One researcher from the Falun Dafa Information Center told NTD that these senders tend to use VPN tools to hide their real location. All emails have been reported to relevant authorities. Shenyun Performing Arts was on stage at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago. The Kennedy Center received a bomb threat targeting the show, but nothing was found afterward. Shenyun performed as planned. The U.S. just reported its first outbreak of the deadly H7N9 bird flu since 2017. The strain was detected at a poultry farm in Mississippi. Bird flu has already spread from birds to mammals in the United States, which raises concerns about whether it could evolve into a new pandemic. At the same time, cities across China are holding medical drills for bird flu infections in humans recently.
Medical drills in eastern China's Anhui province are in full swing. The province's official website shows that civil servants receive training on how to build isolation tents, transfer patients to ambulances, spray disinfecting liquid to kill viruses, and maintain communication channels in times of chaos. The drill host invited experts from China's top health body and the Chinese military's CDC for its eastern theater. Last week, in northern China's Shandong province, a hospital held emergency drills to practice combating outbreaks of infectious respiratory diseases. The drill was a joint exercise between the hospital's infection management department and its cardiovascular ward. Zooming out, similar drills have been happening for a while. At the end of last year, a hospital in southwest Beijing held a medical drill focused on countering human infections of the H7N9 strain of bird flu. Pictures show healthcare providers wearing protective masks and face shields while virus testing patients. 1 month before that, cities in the southern China's Shanxi province also held full-on medical drills aimed at managing bird flu in humans. Around the same time, a port city in northern China, Qingdao, also held emergency medical drills targeting the H5N1 strain of bird flu. Over 100 people participated. NTD has been and will continue reporting on human infections of bird flu in China. We'll keep you posted as the situation develops.
Coming up, President Trump says a deal on the ownership of TikTok could be around the corner. More on the offers that the administration is considering. The U.S. is building up its submarine presence off Australia's coast as the Trump administration shifts its focus to the China threat in the Indo Pacific.
Someone wakes up and they say, is today the day? We make sure that they say, maybe not.
And the European Parliament kicking Chinese tech giant Huawei's lobbyists from its premises. This as a corruption probe rocked the bloc's legislature. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Donald Trump says a deal to sell Chinese-owned app TikTok could be close. TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance must find an American buyer for TikTok, otherwise the app will be ousted from the U.S. Here's what the president said to journalists on Air Force One Sunday.
Do you think there's going to be a deal on TikTok soon?
There could be. We're dealing with 4 different groups, and a lot of people want it, and it's up to me. So there could be.
TikTok owner ByteDance had faced a January deadline to sell the app or shut down in the US. The previous US administration had viewed the Chinese app as a national security risk, as did Trump in his first term. But he has since revised his position and, on returning to office, signed an executive order delaying the ban by 75 days. Trump subsequently floated the idea of selling it to parties including Elon Musk, his ally in government cost-cutting efforts. He has also suggested that the US should get a stake in the app, which analysts value at up to $50 billion. Speaking last week, Trump said the 75-day deadline could be extended if more time is needed to do a deal.
I think, look, we have a lot of interest in TikTok, and China is going to play a role. And so hopefully China will approve of the deal, but they're going to play a role. But we have a lot of interest in TikTok.
On Monday, the identity of the 4 interested groups mentioned by Trump wasn't clear. Among those to recently express an interest is former Los Angeles Dodgers owner Frank McCourt. There was no immediate comment on Trump's claims from TikTok or ByteDance.
On Capitol Hill, a bipartisan effort is underway to counter the Chinese Communist Party's repression on U.S. soil. This comes as the State Department restricts visas to government officials who cooperate with China. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
House lawmakers have reintroduced 3 bills that would give the Department of Homeland Security more tools to combat foreign governments' attempts to intimidate and silence dissidents. The bills would dedicate personnel and resources to investigate transnational repression, a crime in which China is a leading perpetrator, according to Freedom House, a Washington-based nonprofit. A recent example is several fake bomb threats made to scare audience members attending Shenyun, a performing arts company showcasing ancient Chinese civilization before the Chinese Communist Party took over.
Traditional Chinese culture is really rooted in spirituality, in a lot of traditional beliefs. And those are the things that the Communist Party has been trying to wipe out for decades since they took over. These recent threats that Shenyun has received, these bomb threats, these mass shooting threats, including sexually very violent and graphic threats that targeted female performance members.
Congressman August Pfluger said the hostile acts we're seeing across the country are a direct challenge to our nation's sovereignty and infringe upon American civil liberties. Pfluger is a lead sponsor of the bills to combat transnational repression. Alongside this congressional action, the State Department has restricted visas of foreign government officials who cooperate with the CCP to forcibly return people to China who are subject to torture and persecution at the hands of the regime. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard spoke about the U.S.-China relationship on Monday. She says there are challenges, but also opportunities.
We have 2 leaders of 2 very important countries who will play a very central role in taking on those challenges, resolving issues where they exist, and also maximizing any opportunities. The goal, of course, that we all share is to achieve peace, to increase prosperity, and to ensure stability and security for both of our peoples, but in the region as well.
Bad news from Europe for Chinese tech company Huawei. Belgium authorities are investigating Chinese telecom company Huawei for alleged bribery, forgery, and money laundering. The charges are linked to the company's lobbying efforts inside European Union organs based in Brussels. 15 members of the European Parliament could be implicated. NTD's international correspondent David Vives reports from Paris.
Chinese telecommunications company Huawei has been banned from the European Parliament and the European Commission as Belgian authorities investigate the tech giant's lobbying activities in Brussels. Belgian prosecutors said the probe involves allegations of bribery, forgery and money laundering. As part of the probe, police raided 21 locations across Belgium and Portugal, including Huawei's Brussels lobbying office. Early reports indicate 15 current and former members of European Parliament may be implicated. Authorities say Huawei provided European officials with financial incentives, luxury gifts and all expense-paid trips to influence political decisions. The alleged misconduct reportedly occurred from 2021 to the present. Since 2019, Western countries have reduced the use of Huawei's 5G technology due to fears about security and spying from the Chinese firm. The EU Commission has distanced itself from Huawei since then. In 2023, it decided to stop contracting operators that use Chinese technology. In response to the investigation, Huawei said it takes the allegation seriously and has a zero-tolerance policy toward corruption. Regarding the current case, the Belgian court described a form of corruption that is played out very regularly and in great secrecy by the Chinese firm. Belgium Intelligence Services inquires now how China may be using its non-state actors, including senior lobbyists in Huawei's Brussels office, to advance the interests of the Chinese state and the Communist Party around the EU and NATO headquarters in Brussels. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
A U.S. nuclear-powered submarine carried out exercises off the coast of Western Australia yesterday. This paves the way for transferring nuclear sub-capabilities to Australia under AUKUS, a security partnership among the U.S., UK, and Australia.
The USS Minnesota conducted exercises off the coast of Western Australia on Sunday. Under the AUKUS partnership, Australian naval base HMAS Sterling is set to host 4 Virginia-class submarines starting in 2027.
This is the most advanced warship in the world. What they gain is the capability to operate a nuclear-powered, conventionally armed warship.
The location of the base near Asia and the Indian Ocean makes it strategically important to the United States. Director of Foreign Policy and Defense at the United States Studies Center at the University of Sydney, Peter Dean, says defending the Indian Ocean against rising Chinese capabilities and power is important. USS Minnesota Commanding Officer Jeffrey Cornell adds that now is the time to strengthen alliances in the Indo Pacific Command region.
Pause for thought. I think the best way to kind of explain it is, if someone wakes up and they say, "Is today the day?" we make sure that they say, "Maybe not." Just important for the United States, it's important for all of our partners to work together to get to that moment.
In February and March, a Chinese Navy task group circumnavigated, sailed around Australia, and conducted unprecedented live fire drills off the coast, disrupting commercial airlines. Australian officials said this highlighted China's ambition to operate more frequently in Australia's neighborhood.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.